Hey D&D fam, I'm Quick.
And I'm Lee, and you're listening to
Divas and Ducats. So what is a diva? I think divas get a bad rep, but to me, diva is all about the attitude.
As for Ducat, it's your finances, your assets, Skrilla, guap, your coin. We're talking all things with the potential to affect your pockets.
And while we're attorneys by trade, we are divas by choice. Divas and Ducats is for edutainment purposes.
Y'all, we are not Series 511 or 703 professionals. This does not create a financial advisor or attorney-client relationship. The views expressed here are solely our opinions and the opinions of our guests.
It's just our opinions, y'all. Okay, divas, let's talk Ducats.
All right, welcome back, D&D fam. We hope you are well. And today we are going to get into soft life. You know, it's very popular. Everyone is talking about it. You see it everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to get into that, what it is, what it ain't, and how you can try to build a soft life around your money, your honey.
Okay, money and honey.
Yeah. If you're watching, make sure you click the bell below and make sure you are going to divasandducats.com and subscribing because anything we're doing, you can find it there and you'll get little ticklers.
For sure. So let's get into the soft life because I have been talking to quite a bit of people and it seems like 2022 has been hard for a lot of people. I know for me, I had several deaths back to back that I dealt with. Like it felt like a complete repeat of 2012, which was one of the hardest years of my life. It was just like, okay, 10 years later, here we go again, you know? So I think, you know, talking about the soft life is just like perfect timing almost, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I think maybe some of that is like last year, it felt like, whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But last year still felt like we were in a lot of like COVID protocol, and this year a lot of that stuff started to lift. You know, you got return to office, you're able to kind of travel just about anywhere, and I think trying to act normal, even though you still could get, obviously it's still there, like trying to get your bearings around all that and transition and get your kids situated and all of that has been a lot this year, right? And so, you know, we see everywhere people talking about soft life. That's become a new like buzzword, right? And so how are we defining soft life? When they say soft life, what do people mean?
So I'll give you the Urban Dictionary's definition of it, right? So the soft life, it says, it's basically where you make decisions that leave you feeling stress-free and vibrating higher. It is less about wealth and more about making good choices. Another definition says that it's the act of simply living a life with less stress, worry, and concern. You make better decisions that benefit your overall well-being. You don't prioritize fitting in, following trends, which soft life kind of is a trend in and of itself. Right. And just, you know, you're here to fulfill your divine purpose. So, you know, for me, I think you often hear soft life in terms of career, but I do like that definition that it's more so like your overall well-being and not just work, but it's certainly for me, you know, I think a huge focus of it should be part of your career.
Okay. So when we say soft life in our career, what does that look like to you? Or what do you feel like will promote that?
So for me, I think it's, you know, kind of the work-life balance. And then prioritizing like your health, because I often, you know, it's like a reality. Like if you give your all and give everything to a job, whether it's a 9 to 5, even to if you have your own business, you know, and you drop dead, unfortunately, heart attack, stress, like all of that, you drop sick and, you know, you can't come back to work, like they'll have you replaced within a week or two. You know, they'll probably be interviewing within 3 days, 72 hours, you know.
For sure.
So I think, you know, soft life is like prioritizing your health and your well-being and still being able to do your job, but making sure that yourself is a priority, right? And not trying to give everything you got to that 9 to 5.
Right. And I think, you and I talked about just folks we both know, or, people that some of us, and I think some of that is like embedded in us, unfortunately. Like, I think growing up, we hear you have to work twice as hard to get half as far. And so I think very early on, you're taught to work hard, try to outwork people, try to go above and beyond, all of that, right? And so I think, both of us know folks who it almost seems like they're addicted to like the constant hustle and bustle. I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And so like when I think to an extent of soft life, I think to some extent, it looks like some people are almost quiet quitting. Like, if they're not in that situation, they're not being rewarded for all of that hustle. If they feel maybe that, come review time or whatever, that isn't things aren't coming into fruition the way that they foresaw it, then maybe it is taking a step back. And by quiet quitting, I more so mean like, just the practice of, for lack of better words, doing I'm just doing my job. I'm not doing anything more. I'm not doing anything less. This is my job, and I'm coming in at 9, and I'm leaving about 5:30, and that's going to be that. So I think of it that way, too. Like, maybe for those types, for some people, it's like scaling back.
Okay, so for people that haven't heard the term, it's not actually like going in and quitting your job.
No. It's quiet quitting. It's not saying like, you know what, screw this job, let me pass my notice. It's actually like, I am still on this job because, let's be real, most of us are not in a position where if we lost our job today, we would be good for months on end. Most of us just aren't, especially the economy we're in, inflation.
Oh God, how much things going
right. Girl, I just got some lotion the other day. It was $9. I don't understand.
I went and got some heavy cream to make some eggs. It was $6 for some cream.
A dozen eggs was $8.
Right.
And I'm
when
just
the eggs go from 99 cents to $1?
$8. So
it's ridiculous.
Right.
It's so
and
ridiculous.
We've been over the numbers. Most of us do not earn 6 figures. So, prices are going up, wages are not. And so because of that, most of us are in the position where we need our jobs. Let's just keep it real. And so quiet quitting is, I'm still going to show up and I'm still going to do my job because I need my check every week, month, however often they get paid. But I'm not going to stretch myself going above and beyond what's in this description and what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And I think it hits like more so, because I think that's, to me, it seems like that's always been kind of like the millennial attitude. Like, they're like, they prioritize themselves a lot more than, some of the older generation that stay on the jobs 20, 30 years and try to kind of grow it. Now, of course, they have pensions and other benefits for doing that. But it just made me think of this IG guy. His name is I'm Dr. Dre Brown. And he talks, he like brings up these, like he'll be like, so what are the job requirements? Or he was like, no, you didn't hire me for that. I'm not doing that, or he'll talk about like, the Zoom calls. And of course, you see a lot of people on the videos like, oh no, you didn't hire me to be playing on the video. I'll join this meeting, but I'm not turning my camera on. I wasn't hired for that. So he talks about a lot of like, in a funny way, but putting those boundaries and barriers on, with doing that. Now, of course, because of what he does, he was able to loudly quit, not quiet quit, you know what I'm saying? But it was funny because he said he got a lot of backlash from his corporate job because of what he was telling other people to do. So it was like they didn't really like the idea of people setting boundaries, as a corporation. Like, no, we don't like you. So we need you to be willing to work overtime all the time and work the weekends and all of those things. So I just thought that was really interesting.
I think it's so as a millennial, I don't know much enough about Gen Z to say one way or the other. I think anytime you have the generation behind you that's now grown, of course you see things that you like, And then there's things that you kind of admire. So for me, I know as a millennial, we were looked at like, y'all just lazy. Y'all ain't trying to work. Like, we were looked at like, we're different. Because most of our parents are boomers. So, of course, we are much different.
They loyal.
But also, the difference is my generation, we have now seen 2, almost 3 economic downturns. So it's like, look, things are different.
Right.
And one thing my dad said, it's kind of funny. He was just talking to me. He was like, y'all don't stay with a company more than about 3 to 5 years. Like, if you're not seeing that growth or whatever it is you try to do, y'all keep it pushing.
Yeah,
but he also, pointed out, or he also took in the fact that he was saying a lot of companies don't take care of their people as much as his generation. So there may not, depending on what you value, there may not be as much value depending on the person in what does it mean that I've been here 15, 20 years?
Right.
What do I feel that I'm getting in that situation? Because to your point, if I drop dead tomorrow, I'm going to be replaced within a couple weeks. It's not like I'm indispensable. Yeah. So I think millennials, for the most part, have kind of taken that attitude. I know that I am, or this company miing view me as replaceable. So let me get in where I fit in, and let me make it work for me.
And I think that, like you said, the benefits are a large part of it, because the thing, like when our parents retired, they could retire.
Yeah,
like
so still getting a nice little check and your Social Security.
Right. Some of us still have to retire at 60 and still pick up another job if we don't. Like we have to like actively save and actively put in all this money. Where, like you said, a lot of jobs back then, because you were on here 5 or 10 years, they were making sure that you kind of were taken care of through your loyalty. They rewarded loyalty, but now it's just like,
it's different.
Especially with ageism, it's like, we can replace you with the younger and the more technology inclined and all of those things.
More expensive,
right?
But what I have noticed about Gen Z that I do enjoy, at least to some extent, is I feel like Gen Z does a better job of taking care of their mental health and acknowledging the need for mental health. Now, I do think a lot of us overuse mental health terms. Okay. Not my ministry, so I'm gonna leave it there. But I do feel like there's some buzzwords that are overused.
Like?
Because some things are like diagnosis. Like, if you don't have a diagnosis, I just feel like everyone is not a narcissist. Just saying.
Right.
Everyone does not have anxiety.
I think the other ones that's going around is like toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. It's just like just because somebody piss you off don't mean
Yeah, so I feel like we have to be careful with our words, because words mean things. Literally, they have a whole DM, whatever it's called, to like diagnose things. But I do admire that they have those things, and they even set out time at work. Like, we're gonna have meditation, and we're gonna have this room where you can go if you need to get yourself together. Yeah. It's like, this is nice.
That made me think about when we went to Spain, though. Like, remember when they literally shut it down for a certain, they block out times, and we were on the street and it was empty. Like, the businesses shut down, people went home, they took the siestas. Yes. And I was like, wow, like across the whole city, like that's just prioritized, but Europe, America.
But that is a softer life. Like, listen, y'all might not eat dinner about 8, 9 o'clock.
Right.
But y'all from 2 to 5, go on and do what you're gonna do, and we'll regroup if we need to and go about your day. So I think that is also an example of like that workspace of trying to your point, balance it out. Like, still, of course, do your job, but at the end of the day, like you said, like you have a life outside of that, and you need to be able to enjoy the ducats that you do earn. Right. You know what I mean?
And I think, honestly, a part of soft life that people don't talk about is making sure your ducats are in a row. You know what I'm saying? Because people often want to talk about like the traveling part of it, and a lot of soft life requires you spending money. If you want to get the things. If you want to travel, travel. But all of that comes with making sure that your ducats are in order, because I don't care how much you're traveling, if you're not doing it on, traveling for free in that episode we did with points, or you haven't saved up for that causes a harder life. That stress is, sure, you're traveling to the beautiful and whatever, posting your pictures, but you're coming back and then you're stressed because your money isn't in order. Yeah. So I think a part of creating that softer life, like we were talking about, like creating that nest, because the corporations aren't necessarily going to do it, but making sure that you're budgeting and getting those things in a row so that you can, if you needed to relax, that you could relax, you know. Yeah. And again, we always have the outlayers of, it doesn't matter, like you said, with inflation, and you know, we realize that right now, even if you're making $40,000, which is what I was making when I was able to pay off my debt, that is a struggle. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's hard. That is hard. So I did definitely realize that there's some that it don't matter how much you save, you definitely need a double income or two-parent household or two people living in the house just to be able to survive, you know, at certain income. So, but for those that do have the extra and can, you know, budget and focus on their monetary, I think that is a part of contributing to your soft life as well. That, you know, really isn't addressing these memes and, you know, things.
Yeah, for sure. I think that you see the glam of soft life, but not, to your point, some steps you need to take to maybe make your life a little softer.
Right.
And I definitely, you know, again, you know how I feel, payment plan it.
Right.
To me, payment plan is attributing to soft life. I know, because listen, I'm going to book that trip, honey. But what I'm going to do is I pay my $325 every month for 5 months, and now I'm going. So then whatever money you spend, you know, on the trip, that's different in terms of like, okay, you might, you know, budget whatever, a couple $100 for your activities and really not even your food if you're going somewhere all inclusive. But, you know, I think those are the kind of things you could do to kind of make, to your point, life easier and not have a ball and then come back and be like, oh Lord, I got to figure out how to do you know.
Right. And I mean, in doing that, like you said, making the you know, making the payment plans, just having goals, like a part of, like you said, part of soft life is being able to make that action plan. You know, sitting down, being able to set actionable goals. You know, we talk about SMART goals, you talk about SMART goals all the time. But having goals, I think, you know, writing them down, they say that like that somehow it gets into your mind or seals it in your mind much more than just talking it out, you know, or just saying I'm going to do these things. Writing it makes it 3 times to 4 times more likely just by writing it down, you know. So yeah, just, you know, I think goal setting is a huge part of having smart, you know, some people need accountability partners, some don't. If you're one of those people that don't, that's great. I am, you know. So you know, making sure that you have those people that will hold you accountable and that you trust with that. So
to that, I would say, like, yes, do it. Don't feel the need to make it some big event.
Right.
I mean, some people do vision boards, what have you. It's that time where people assess their goals, but also you can create a goal at any point of the year. So don't feel like, oh, I got to put this pressure on, or don't feel like you got to hit the gate, out the gates running, because that is part of what I think contributes to somewhat derailing your plans is not pacing yourself. So just like running, like, okay, I hate running, but it does the body good. So, but what I noticed is, because one of the things that I've been trying to do in the little run club that I go to is like get my mile time down. And what happens sometimes, of course, you're with a crowd, the adrenaline in and of itself, you're kind of running quicker than you would alone. Because alone, it's easier for you to be like, child, I'm going to walk. Right. Whereas when there's all these people, that's kind of already motivation to kind of keep up the pace or whatever. But what I notice is sometimes when you're not careful to pace yourself in that first mile, if you're doing 2, by the time that second one comes, you've gassed yourself, and it's harder to keep whatever, if it's a 10-minute mile or whatever, it's harder to keep that 10-minute mile pace for mile 2, because not only you've been running already, so you're tired, and then you use more energy instead of like trying to equal it out.
And then you mentally know that there's still a mile behind it.
That too.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk about goals, it's the same kind of thought process for me. When you go into January, like, I'm just going to go cold turkey, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. You tire yourself out in that first month or two, and then, you know, March, April comes, and you're beating yourself up, and I didn't make it, I didn't do whatever. And so what I would say is almost make it like small chunks, right? So let's just take a goal of, you got some debt, let's say that. You got $10,000 in debt. I like round numbers. You know me and math. So let's say you say in 2023, I want to pay off at least half of my $10,000 in debt. Because again, to your point, I don't know how much you make. It might be difficult to pay, So at least 5 of that 10 you want to pay off in 2023. So on an index card, kind of write that out. The big goal is I want to pay off at least $5,000 in debt, right? And then what can you do in January to do that? Maybe it's January's task is I'm going to find the extra money, if there is extra money. Quick and I talked about when she has me down to one time a month at the nail salon. Now, I do feel like eventually I will get to just the pedicure because I'm just not, I don't feel like I could do my own pedicure the way they do it. Maybe I could get to the point where I do my nails myself. We'll see. But now, so maybe for you, it's that. Like, you know what? I'm spending about $100 at the nail shop every month. I got $100 extra that I'm going to put towards the minimum payment. And then maybe February, it's, I'm going to call the credit company and see if I can negotiate my interest down so that I can actually see a difference in the payment I'm making. So, take the little chunks, and then that way you're seeing some progress you're making each month towards what it is you're trying to do. Instead of just like, I don't know.
I gotta have these 5,000 off by March.
Right. So I say that, or even like saving, in the opposite, if you're trying to do that same kind of concept, like, each month do something. It seems small, but it's in furtherance of your goal, know?
So let's talk about what the soft life is not, right? So we know the soft life, like you said, is you have to take steps to get to the soft life. So the soft life isn't going to be easy to achieve, right? So just because, you're like, I want to attain a soft life. It's not. I
feel like a soft life is ease, but it's not easy.
Right.
It's not the same thing.
Okay.
And so to your point, we talked about sacrifices, whether it's your nail money, whether it's saying that for some people, it's like, maybe I'm going to pick up a little part-time job. That's still, you're sacrificing more time because you're now doing a part-time job to meet that goal. You're going to have to make certain decisions that align with what you're trying to do. And that means, frankly, you're going to have to say no to certain things. Yeah. I know you and I talk about, like, for me, one of the things that my big umbrella 10-year plan or whatever is, I like to work. I'm not that chick that's just like, I want to get this rich man and not work. I would still be working in some capacity if I married a multi-millionaire. I'm going to do something. But I want to have the attitude of, so if you've ever watched Everybody Hates Chris, Rochelle, it's a whole montage. Her husband Julius always has 2 or 3 jobs, and he is super cheap. And so she is always quitting jobs as soon as something upsets her, because she says, I don't need this. My man has 2 jobs. And so I eventually want to have enough going on passively, because to your point, if I'm having to run 10 things, I'm not going to really enjoy what it is that I have going on. So I, want to have enough passively going on, little streams, that when I go into my 9 to 5, I can have that Rochelle attitude. Like, at the end of the day, I don't need this. I got 5, jobs. I have these other things going on. Right. And not from the standpoint of acting stank or like not doing your job, but from that attitude of having that kind of financial freedom and leverage, it changes a little bit of how you move, and it removes some of the anxiety around, oh, what if there's layoffs? Right. Oh, what if, this, that, and the third. And so in furtherance of that, 2023, one of my things is like, okay, let's make your first move towards some kind of investment. And so I'm going to have to say no to, certain expenditures. I'm going to have to figure out, okay, girl, you want to do a HELOC? How you going,
right.
There's going to be certain moves that I have to make. And part of that, if you're investing or if you're going to finance anything, you got to make sure your credit good. Like, what you going, so those are the kind of things that, to your point, sacrifices are necessary for a soft life, and those sacrifices are not necessarily fun, but you have to see the big picture, right?
And I think a lot of times also when people talk about the sacrifices of soft life, they talk about sacrificing relationships, right? But it's always in this like cutoff spirit, like if they they don't serve me anymore, you no longer serve me. Cut them
I
off.
don't feel peace.
Right.
This is how my soft life. You're not bringing me peace.
Right, so have everybody out here alone. That's what it's gonna do.
So here's the thing to me. I think a soft life in a relationship is I am in something healthy. And that does not mean that there will not be conflict, because in any relationship, you and I are sister friends and we've had conflicts. But what I do think it means is that when there is conflict, where there is contention, we are able to address this situation in a way where we're not disrespecting each other, where we're not going below the belt, where we're able to, if we need to, take some space to come back to the conversation. And back to the conversation, because sometimes clarity. Sometimes you're having the same conversation a few times to figure out, to actually get to a solution.
And that is okay.
Yeah. And so I think that is what a healthy relationship looks like. Now, some people, I don't want to say they thrive in it, but some people, I don't know, if they don't have chaos, they feel like it's something wrong with the relationship, or it's boring or whatever. But truly, a healthy relationship, you should not be activating your fight or flight. I'll say it that way.
That's good.
That is how I would define it. Not that there's not going to be like, you're never going to argue or you're never going to disagree, because that is not realistic. I mean, sometimes I make myself mad. So.
Right. And I think, it was important, like, when we were talking about, like, I know one of the issues that I had that you didn't even realize was there until we brought it up. And it was, a point of conflict, because I felt like you had a phone issue, right? With the phone thing. So Lee would be around me, and we would be talking, having our meetings, whatever. We spend a lot of time together. And I'll stay on the phone, her family call, whoever calls, she would pick up the phone. So when I'm out of her presence, and I call, I always notice, and as I'm saying it, I'm realizing that happens to me too. Like, now my phone dies, you know what I'm saying? But if I'm with you, my phone's probably not dead because it's on a charger, you know what I'm saying? But Grace wasn't extended in the opposite way, right? So, it was like, oh, well, it must be personal to me. Why is she not answering my phone calls? Because, but we, as we talked it out and had the conversations, we just had to use, some of these expensive therapy tools that we have acquired, right? And one of the ones that I like the most, and you gave that one to me, was the story I'm telling myself. Yeah. Right? So talk about that one a little bit.
So it has very much helped me in conflict, because I tended to be, and I still struggle with this. I'm not gonna say my default in conflict is to shut down. Right. So once I feel like I'm not understood, or I don't know how else to explain it, like, I just want to be like, forget it. Like, that's where I go. And so instead, one of the things that my therapist taught me was, in a situation where you feel misunderstood or there's assumptions being made, it might help to speak to that person and say, when you didn't answer your phone, I noticed that your phone is readily available. You tend to stick close to your phone. And when you don't answer the phone for me, the story I'm telling myself is that it's something with me personally, or that you're ignoring me, or you don't value me as much. And then usually that person is going to step in because, they love you. Right. And they're going to be like, no, like, I realize, and the other thing is like intent versus impact. So most of the time, again, these people that care about you, people do not intend to be hurtful to you, to be malicious or whatever. Now, their impact may have been like that you were hurt, but at least that person now understands, why is she acting like that? Like, because they don't know the story or the narrative that you're giving this situation. Right. And usually that opens up the conversation to at least understand, like, I didn't even realize, I wasn't by the phone, or I'll, try really hard to, whatever, and be present. I know that's one of the things I'm working on that does lead to me not picking up the phone as much, is being more present, because I hate when, like, people aren't present with me. So it's like, you got to keep that same energy. But yeah, I definitely do think therapy contributes to a softer life, because you're able to learn conflict resolution, and even, like, a lot of conflict boils down to communication. It's not really the thing. It's how did y'all communicate about the thing.
Yeah. So, I think the reason we brought that up, because, as you're talking about soft life and talking about relationships, I think sometimes we cut off relationships that should not be cut off because we don't have the tools to communicate through that through that discourse or whatever is going on. And the easiest thing to interpret it as, well, they're not for me. You know, I wouldn't be feeling this negativity if they were meant for me. It's just like, boo, you get mad at yourself sometimes. Like, so having a whole nother person.
Be sick of myself.
Right. So how could you not with a whole nother partner, you know? So just learning healthy communication. Like you said, now if you're talking about, you know, you might have to come to a certain topic a few times, and it doesn't necessarily mean that person's not listening, that they don't love you. You know, as long as there's action steps. Now, if you're still talking about the same thing and they're like, you know, dumb as a doorknob about it, or ignoring you about it, or walking away, you know, there are other things that come along with trying to, you know, have a conversation. You realize this person isn't receiving anything, and they don't care about your pain. We're not talking about those kind of situations, right? But you also have to bring yourself to the table and how you're communicating to a person, because sometimes you have to be able to take that step back, like you said, and realize, okay, I could have came at her like, girl, why you always not, you know, it could have been very, you know, so you can't be popping off at people.
Because that's already changing the dynamic of the conversation.
Right. Like you said, it puts you into that fight or flight mode.
Right.
And so you can't expect a different response. You can't expect someone to come try to hold your hand and talk you through it, and you popping off at them, or you up in their face. So you have to, you know, check yourself too in the way you do these communications as you're talking about. You want a softer life or relationships, you know. And just, you know, just check these cutoff spirits, because sometimes I just feel like, you know, the devil is real busy and trying not to have people connect, because you know that's just a lot of the way. Like, that's why depression and anxiety and all that stuff was so high during COVID, because we could not connect. You know what I'm saying? So it's meant to be. You are meant to be connected to people, to friends, to family. You know, choose your family now. You do. But, you know, you're meant to be connected. That's the way we are designed to be. So sometimes this cutoff spirit in and of itself can lead to you not having a soft life, even though you think that's the intent. That's not the impact.
And to that, I would summarize it as like effort over perfection. So even within my own like relationships, romantic or otherwise, if there's something that I've pointed out that like bothers me, or something that someone has said I bother them. So one of the things that I've been working on, it's not perfect, but I try, is like my timeliness, because I am not an on-time person. I have just always been 15 minutes behind somehow. And so I have worked on trying to make sure that I am on time, or at least the times that I just still fail to let you know this is where I am and this is my ETA. But and same thing for if something, you know, whatever it is that bothers you, if you see that person trying, that really to me says a lot about their intent with you than like that person just like, well, this is how I am, or whatever,
accept me for who I am.
Right. And by repeated conversations, I don't mean like I'm telling you the same thing multiple times. It's more so like those heavier moments in life, right, when you're going through a rough patch or whatever. Like certain topics are so, I guess as people call them, like uncomfortable conversations. Certain topics are so massive that you're gonna have to take them a chunk at a time. You know, whatever I can't think of an issue right now, like off the top of my head, but like certain topics just almost seem to have subsets or steps you got to work through. And that's what I mean by you might have to be working through that thing a few times. So and
I think we had talked about it. We had Todd on in one of the episodes, and he was talking about like unleashing everything at one time. Like sometimes you just got to break those things down so you can try to resolve, you know, one thing at a time. Like you can't just take the whole ball and be like, yo, let's fix everything, you know. So we hope you know, in having this discussion, we've given you some like actual steps you can take to have a soft life, and kind of what it does not mean. You know, with the quiet quitting, it don't mean you got to go out here and go to work with a bad attitude or not do anything at all, because you are being paid to work. But we are definitely telling you, do not be stressing yourself and you know, going just like that whole, like you said, work harder to. In some settings, you do. I mean, you do have to prove yourself, especially if you're coming in, you know, young. Like there are certain things, but sometimes you know when everybody's dumping stuff on your plate because they know you're gonna do it and they home. So you know, we hope we've given you some like actual steps to be able to try to create this soft life. To you know, just do some self-care, some self-assessment, some goal setting. and just take that into the new year and see what kind of magic you can make happen.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
So we are going to get into the listener letter at this point. Questions, comments, concerns, shenanigans. You can find us at divaadvice@gmail.com. That is DIVAADVICE@gmail.com.
Diva Advice.
All right, today's letter goes. Dear Divas, I've been with my man for about 2 years now. Everything is great. He's thoughtful, kind, sweet, funny, and we spend a lot of time together, and I've never felt this way. Okay. There's just one thing. I can't stand his kids. He has 3. Ages 8, 12, and 19. For the most part, the oldest is in and out as he's working and going to school. However, the younger 2 have no boundaries. They speak to me as if I'm one of their peers, especially the 12-year-old girl. The 4-year-old is just too grown and inappropriate. Conversation with the mothers, plural, are already strained when my man talks to them, so I don't expect them to be any help. And when I do say something to my boyfriend, he writes it off as kids being kids. While that's true, kids will not necessarily be bad ASS kids. So, should I end things? I'm clearly not their mother, but what can I do to get respect? Would you date a man with young children? And would you date a man with children by multiple mothers? Signed, Anonymous.
So I was so excited for you.
Because everything was great?
Yes, I was. So I'll answer the easiest questions first. Yes, I would date a person with young kids because I have a young kid. So, of course, I'm not going to discriminate on that.
By multiple mothers?
I was engaged to a guy that had kids by multiple mothers. People get married.
I guess it depends on how we find multiple.
More than one.
But I think a multiple is like a lot. Like...
I mean, in both of them, if you got 2 with
we're
drama.
going back to that. 2 is a couple.
It's few.
I mean, multiple is at least 3 in my mind.
Okay.
Multiple mothers.
Oof. Well, I feel like they bring a drama 2 can feel like 5. Like it don't matter.
That's right.
She said she had barely had a kind of relationship with any of them. So he has 3. That's pretty much 3 relationships. She didn't say like she had a good relationship with any of the moms. So, you're dealing with that already. 2 of them are young. So you're going to be dealing with that for a while.
Yeah, 12 and 4. You got at least... that 4-year-old got about 14 years.
Right. Like, that's a long time to be not getting along. And so I'll say this. Kids are definitely raised different than we were raised growing up. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, a lot of these kids, and I will bring myself to the table, like, we don't have the whole... it's not said out loud, right? Kids need to be in a kid's place. The kids have to go up into their room. They're not supposed to eat at the table with adults. Like, there's this whole thing in the African American community where kids should be seen and not heard, and I grew up like that, you know what I'm saying? So I know what that is to be in that kind of strict upbringing. Now, I do understand the whole not talking back thing of being disrespectful to an adult, but I do believe kids should be able to have a voice. I also believe that in certain situations, I don't think adults realize in that whole, kids shouldn't, I guess, talk to adults in a certain way. Like, if you're bringing toxic environment to a child is more than likely going to try to defend their safe space, right? So if they're used to, when daddy was there, this was all good and it was fine, and you come in and now it feels more tense for them, they probably are going to speak up because daddy thought it was fine. You know what I'm saying? So there's probably a little bit more arguing between them that they're not used to hearing. Now, again, how they handle it is different, but I can't see a child speaking up, in those ways. But above all else, whether you have your child say yes ma'am, no ma'am, you in the South, or whether they're Mrs. this or Mr. that, I do believe kids should show respect to an adult. You're not my friend, you are a child, and you're going to be treated as such, but I do believe kids should have a voice. Now, as far as how you can get respect from that, if you have gone to your man and talked to you about it, he doesn't have an issue, you do not have a relationship with these kids' mother, so that's not even an avenue for you to get any kind of help. Honestly, I don't see how you're going to gain any kind of respect, because you're not going to be able to get it from the kid if their figures of authority, mom and dad, let them talk any kind of way or do any kind of thing, because what they're gonna see in that house, you know, it was one of the things in my house, like I could not go to my dad, you know, if my mom said something.
Right.
If my dad said something, you know, my mama couldn't go against whatever they talked. We didn't see them talking,
Right.
but they talked. You know what I'm saying? So there was no going back and forth between parents. But it sounds like in your situation, these kids know that that's exactly what they can do. They don't have to respect Mrs. Whoever, you know, because their dad feels like this is okay. He's like, well, it's fine. Let it happen, you know. So I think you should definitely pay attention to those things. And also, if you plan on, you know, you're saying things are going well, and you're probably envisioning, as women do, getting married. You're probably envisioning having kids with this man. I will tell you now, the way you see him raising these kids is how he's going to raise your kid. Like, don't think it's because it's y'all that suddenly he's going to become this completely different daddy and have these completely different skill sets that he will have with your child that he doesn't have with that. So you pay attention, you know what I'm saying? We often try to do that, fit ourselves in, well, it would be different if it was me, you know? We often try to fit ourselves in those ways and try to change those things. So I would just be saying, be very attentive to what you're actually seeing. Pay attention to how it's making you feel, and you know, because I don't see that dynamic changing if the support is not there.
Yeah, that's real.
Yeah.
So I don't have any kids. I'm gonna just I bring myself.
You dated people with kids.
I have. Would I date a man with young kids? I am at the point where I would prefer not to date a man with children that are younger than school age. I'm just gonna be honest.
What's that, 5 and below?
Really about 7.
Okay.
Because I feel like, and it may or may not be true, but usually a lot of that drama, that back and forth, that are y'all still messing, a lot of that is resolved.
It's true.
By age 7. I don't, what they say, soft life and peace. I don't
true.
bring that drama here. I don't have kids. I don't have, you know, some man in the background. I don't want him around my kids.
Right.
I don't bring that to the table. So I don't want that brought to me.
That's
And
fair.
I honestly, I want, you know, those of you single moms that are watching, I want you to know from the other side of the table, when y'all say that thing about, well, you don't want no, I don't want that woman around my kids. We okay with that? Like, okay, unpopular opinion, it's fine. I'm just saying.
I don't say it, honey. I was praying for
I'm
someone
just
to be
saying,
with my
like,
son's father. So
but
please let it be a good
those are
woman.
exactly the type of, see, you did a little different. Those are the type of women that we like, child, I'm not impressed to be
Ain't
around your
nobody
kid. Like,
begging to be the second mama.
right, I got to be nice to this child might be bad. I got to be nice to this child. Like, come on now. Like,
Well,
that's different
y'all heard
than,
it.
I'm just gonna be real. The mamas that are like this, you on the other side, you pray for the mamas like this. Just you know, take care of my child. Nice
Right.
to meet you. It ain't no problems. But all of that, we feel that same energy. Like, girl, I am not pressed. So I'm gonna be real. I do not prefer
Yeah.
to date no man with kids 7 and under. I also prefer, like I said, I define multiple as like 3-4 mamas. It's not for me,
I couldn't do
because for me, that's a more likelihood of some headaches. I don't want it unless you have an airtight situation where everything is flowing. I'm likely to be like, nah, I'm good on that, because 3-4 mamas means at least 3-4 kids, and no. In terms of this situation with the kids, I agree with Quick. I would say this. I'm not sure the conversations that you've had, and like we say about communication, I would be very clear with your man, if this is still a conversation that you have not had, about this is what respect looks like to me. These are the expectations, because I'm not sure if you all live together or you're just around each other a lot, but if you live in that house, that's a whole different dynamic too.
Right.
So this is how, you know, I define respect. This is what I would expect of children when they're like talking to me, if they're in the home, you know, that we share, what have you. And are you on board with this? Because as daddy, you're the enforcer, and they get in line and fall in line accordingly.
Right.
If he then is still not willing to be like, you know what, you're right, I'm gonna have that conversation, and have it in front of you, so that it's not, you know,
okay, let's be no
clear.
doubt. Right.
Then yeah, you might need to consider, in that situation, I would be considering like, this might be too much for me. This is gonna be a deal breaker. Because yes, as I, you know, mid-30s, At this point, the men I date usually have kids, but I have not had a situation where somebody's child has come to me out of pocket, and you as the I almost said other woman, but not like that. You as the non-mom, you're always in a losing situation in that, because you're not mama. So you don't, unless dad pretty much gives you that authority of like, this is Miss So-and-so, and you're going to respect her as an adult, and what she says goes, and I second whatever she says. There's no winning that. And to your point too, if you want kids with this man, like, same thing, like, that just now is your kid. It doesn't change the dynamic of, he seems to have a hands-off kind of approach with the discipline, whereas you again seem to almost come from something like what Quick grew up in, and what I to an extent grew up in with as well, is that you don't buck certain things with an adult. That's just not that's not how that goes. And so I would definitely make sure, if you have not already, to have that clear conversation and what respect looks like to you, and some examples. If little Miss Thing said XYZ, you need to have an example. When she said this, I feel like that is unacceptable, and blah blah blah.
Right.
So hopefully that helps. Let us know how it goes. Hope you stay in love.
Right.
divaadvice@gmail.com. All right, y'all. So that is it for this episode. Again, make sure you follow us on the things. We are on Facebook and Instagram, Divas and Ducats. We are www.divasandducats.com. Any tips, anything?
No, I would just ask y'all to go to YouTube and subscribe if you've been a long-time listener. If you're a new listener, just go to YouTube and subscribe. You can see us on there. And, if you are listening in on Apple or Spotify and you love what you're hearing, make sure you send us reviews, send us comments. We love to hear from y'all and reply to you guys. So, just take out the new year. Be safe, guys. Be safe. We don't want y'all to need any attorneys and visit any magistrates over the new year. So in the meantime, in between time, have a great attitude.
All right, bye.